Moving on is never easy, but sometimes it is crucial. I'm moving on. 8 years ago, I started my wedding cinematography company, 4LC Studios, and it's been an incredible run, and I'm super thankful for all the opportunities. But I'm done with it because other things need to come in place. See, it's not that I don't like weddings. I wouldn't have done it so long if I didn't like it. It's just things change. You see, I think out of all the things that I've learned and discovered most about myself over the last year to year and a half is that as much as I'd like to tell myself that I can do a million things at once, and though I feel I have the capacity to do a lot of things at once, I've realized I can't do everything that I really want at the level that I really want all at once. So in order to make room for some of the things that I want to do and some of the things that I'm going to begin doing in 2022, some things have to be eliminated. Now, a few people have known about this for the last couple of months, and they've asked a lot of the same questions that maybe you're asking. Why don't I sell the business? Why don't I just hire people to do the work for the business? Why don't I do this? Why don't I do that? Lots of very valid questions. Here are some of my answers behind it. So the first question, why don't I sell it? I have considered this, and I am maybe still realistically considering it if someone really had like a legit idea that they feel like would make sense. But one of the things when I think about wedding cinematography and I think about the connections that I've made with wedding planners and photographers and vendors, I feel like the connection that I've made with them is actually more of a personal connection tied to me as a person and the team around me when I am at weddings. Because for the most part, over the course of the last 8 years, I have filmed most of the weddings. And those relationships that I built obviously had connections with me. And I feel like simply someone buying it and continuing 4LC Studios, I don't know if those same connections would still continue to hire 4LC Studios without me. I think there's possibility of that. I also think there's opportunity for someone to be able to take what I have built and continue to build on it in a good way. If you're watching this and you have an idea and you want to do that, I'm definitely open to talking. Question number 2, why don't I just build a team again and just have people run every aspect of it? The problem in that lies in the fact that when you have a team that does all of those things. Let's say you have a person that does all of your booking, 2 shooters that do the shooting, and you have someone that does the editing. When all is said and done and you pay all of those people, there's very, very little profit left over. And if you factor in how much stress is actually involved with weddings, for the stress being this high, right, as high as you can get stress level, and the money profit at the end of paying all the people is low, it doesn't really feel like it makes a lot of sense to do that. Weddings can be a great way to make money, don't get me wrong, I did it for many years. But you make the most money when you're the person shooting it and booking it and doing most of the work involved with it because all the profit kind of goes to you. Right before COVID, I was starting to build up a team and I had a person that was doing all the booking, which made it really easy for me to not have to worry about that side. And then I had kind of a very dedicated second shooter that would always shoot with me and was even capable of being a first shooter, and I'd have someone else be a part of it and they were capable of doing that, and so that worked good. And then I had an editor that was doing all the edits, so realistically there wasn't too much that I was doing other than the shooting for the most part. But that also meant that 70% of my profit, 80% of my profit maybe on some weddings, was being paid out. So what little remained financially didn't make a lot of sense for all the stress I still felt with having to make sure that all those things were actually being taken care of correctly. Once COVID hit and basically all the weddings stopped, all those core people I had that were kind of running 4LC Studios, while I didn't really obviously have much use for the position anymore. So naturally, the team kind of dwindled down to nobody. And in turn, I'd kind of have to be building back up from scratch that entire team. And while I'm building that entire team again, I'd have to be doing all the work myself. And for the money that's left over from it, it just doesn't really seem like a great use of my time. See, back in 2013, when I started 4LC Studios, it was like a side hustle, right? So I had another job, let's just say, that was right here. I was a full-time musician and I wasn't really making a ton of money with that, but my full-time job was kind of paying me, roughly that same amount of money year by year that I needed. At first, 4LC Studios, which is represented here by this black line, was starting to make a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and eventually it bypassed the actual job and the other income I had. But then fast forwarding to about 2017, when I went full-time into 4LC Studios, well, see, then what happened is 4LC Studios was starting to grow and starting to grow and starting to grow. And as it was growing, though, I was starting to do more and more commercial work. And so I decided in 2019 that I was going to open up Scaling Creative instead, because Scaling Creative was going to be my commercial company. 4LC Studios was the weddings. And then what happened is, as I naturally migrated those away, I started to do more and more commercial work. 4LC Studios kind of just ended up being like a stagnant line that was making income, but it was obviously only a certain part of my income. And naturally, I started making more and more and more money with Scaling Creative, more and more and more and more and more, until eventually my income for Scaling Creative was so much higher than the income for 4LC Studios. And so naturally, it made sense that, okay, I was going to start to put more of my time and more effort into Scaling Creative, because naturally that was going to make me more money. And it was also easy for me to continue to scale that and not have to be bombarded with weekends and weddings and nonstop kind of hustle for weddings when there was only a little bit of income with it. But then you fast forward to March of 2020, let's just say, when this whole COVID thing started. And 4LC Studios went from maybe making a certain percentage of money every year to basically making no money whatsoever. If you're into weddings, you totally understand that. Meanwhile, Scaling Creative, though, on the other side, was continuing to grow and continuing to grow. And sure, it went like a little bit more straight during COVID and didn't go crazy high, but it was growing and growing and growing. But in comparison, where this was actually growing and had income, and 4LC Studios had no income whatsoever, it was kind of a very easy transition for me to kind of be like, okay, well, 4LC Studios isn't really making any money here, and I'm still doing fine overall, and I still have plenty of income coming from Scaling Creative, and I'm hiring more people for that and continuing to grow that. Meanwhile, 4LC Studios isn't making any money for me, so it's kind of easy for me to say, well, I don't need 4LC Studios anymore, because clearly it's not made a lot of money for me anyway. You see what I mean? It's a very natural time right now to be able to say, you know what, it's just easier to move on and continue to work and focus my efforts on other things. So the question is, what's next for me? Well, if you follow my channel, you know that there's always something going on, and obviously I'm really excited to continue to build Oddly Satisfying Pressure Washing, which will start back up in the spring. I'm starting another business that I will hopefully share with you very soon, and I'm actually really high probability buying another business in another whole industry, and I'm excited to tell you about that as well. There's always something going on, but I've realized the honest truth is I can only do so much, and I can only put in as much effort as I have available. And even though 4LC Studios only took a certain percentage of my actual time, it still was a lot when you add it all up. I still had to book the weddings. I still had to send all the contracts. I had to sign contracts. I had to send money, send payment reminders. I had to talk with the couple. I had to do the questionnaires for the weddings. I had to shoot them. I had to import them. I never really minded shooting weddings, but that was also when I didn't do anything during the weekend. When 4LC Studios was my main thing, I could just kind of shift my time and work on a Saturday for filming, or Friday or Saturday, and then just kind of edit a couple of days during the week, and that was it. Now I can't really afford to take off any time during the week because of Scaling Creative, and so my weekends when I film on a Saturday, it's taking up another day entirely from my family, and that's just hard for me to grasp. So what does it mean for this YouTube channel? I think that's pretty obvious, and I've talked about this a lot, but obviously there is not going to be any more wedding content on this channel at all. I obviously kind of stopped trying to do a lot of behind the scenes for a while now, and as you know, I put out a course talking about every single thing that I know regarding weddings, plus another full 1 hour behind the scenes that you've never seen on this channel. You can click the link down below if you actually want to purchase that. I will probably continue to have that available, but most likely I'm going to be deleting all of the wedding videos on my channel entirely. I know they bring value to people, but I also know that a lot of you watching this have come to my channel because of weddings, and as much as that was obviously a part of my life, it's not going to be anymore. And I don't want people to be coming to this channel thinking that they can expect more of that. I know a lot of you don't watch some of my other videos because of that reason alone, but the honest truth is weddings are a thing of the past for me, and they're not coming back. For me, the extent of my wedding teaching is going to just be in that wedding filmmaking course that I have. So if that's interesting to you, check it out. You may be filming weddings now and you might love it. You might have a thriving business. You might just be getting started in weddings, and there's nothing wrong with that. I am not here to say that wedding filmmaking is not something that you should continue doing forever. If you love it, go for it. All I'm saying is my channel has always been about trying to talk to you and show you how I've kind of adapted and moved on from one thing to the next and built multiple businesses, and I'm trying to build multiple sources of revenue, and I highly recommend that kind of thing to people because you just never know what's happening these days, and it's good to just have some options when it comes to what's happening. So hopefully you'll want to follow along with this channel because I hope to bring you more insight into what that looks like, because I know there are some of you that are watching this that are currently wedding filmmakers that may actually be nearing the end for themselves as well, or you may want to be nearing the end, but you're kind of figuring out how could you possibly get rid of that income source and replace it with something else. And hopefully you've watched over the last couple of years with this channel that I've kind of brought you along on that journey, and I'm going to continue to. Does that make sense? So I don't want you to go anywhere. Hang out.